Welcome back, guys, to the ARTFUL Podcast. It's Matteo here, your host, and this is my podcast. I'm an artist, and in this podcast, we talk with some really interesting people. So before we start with the interview, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel to grow and for me to contact new people, new artists, and they're more willing to have a chat with me if the numbers are bigger. So really, I'm just gonna start with the interview, and don't forget to subscribe, and all the links below, they're all related to the artist that I'm interviewing every time, and to my Instagram and their Instagram, so don't forget to check it out. Please, again, subscribe to the channel and enjoy the studio shot.
I can your see work is incredible, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Lovely. Thank you.
No, it's amazing. I mean, and I'm very complimented that you have chosen to interview someone whose style is so different. Really.
Yeah, it's literally one of the reasons why I want to talk to you, because it's different from what I do, and it will be nice to understand like what's going on in a way, like how do you approach? Obviously, it's gonna be like different from my practice, but that's why it's curious. It's like I like it. I call and try to interview people that I like and I'm interested in, and I don't wanna just talk to anyone. Obviously it's a different frame from what I do, and that's I was so curious and I wanted to talk to you.
Yeah. No, well, likewise. I feel like I would like to interview you one day.
Feel free to do question. Like, I don't mind. I'm here to answer as well.
What got you wanting to set up a podcast? It was
fun idea. I'm a big fan of podcasts. It's literally the only thing I'm listening and watching right now. It's where I got all my news, my information. It's the only thing that I listen to. I really like, because it's independent. It's really everyone's opinion. It's not dictated by a big company or anything like that. And so I just listen to people opinions and facts and stories. And I started this during the lockdown, the first lockdown back in May. Because we couldn't meet anyone, and I was missing. I was coming out from university. It was almost a year already, but I was coming out from university, and I was start to missing the fact that I couldn't talk about art with anyone that I'm really close to, because all my friends, my really close friends, my girlfriend, my brothers, they like art, but they can't really talk about it, and I was missing that, and especially with the lockdown, I was feeling even more. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna start it. I always wanted to start one at some point, and that was the perfect occasion, because I had all the time to do it. And it was only audio at the beginning, and now slowly I'm trying to make it better with video and stuff like that. So
that's fantastic.
So it's
well done.
Thank you. I'm really enjoying it. I did one yesterday with the New York artist. That was really great.
Amazing.
And I'm trying to be honest, it's kind of selfish because it's for me, but I like to share it anyway.
But there's nothing wrong with being selfish. It's especially if it's, it shows other people positive responses to things,
People are very enjoying it, especially like because I wanted to have like an easy way. I didn't want to get like technical and stuff. Like, we can if like people want to, but I wanted to be for like easy to listen to anyone, because I tried to listen to some art podcasts, and there are really few that they nail that, and they always like try to get technical, and it can be boring for people. They're not into it, and I just wanted to have like an easy chat with artists and talk about their practice, to be honest. Nothing really too complicated, nothing too formal, but so that's
well, Matteo, I think not only to set up the podcast, but to do it in a language that is not your native language. I have to say, well done. And your English is fantastic. So I don't know how to say congratulations in Italian, but
it's really close. Congratulazioni. It's really close.
Congratulazioni.
Perfect. To be honest, I've been living here for like almost 7 years, like more than 7 years actually. So it would be weird if I didn't know the language.
No, well done. Well done.
That's great. How are you anyway? What were we doing today?
Having technical issues initially.
Yeah.
I mean, it's slow. I think slow. January is a tricky one at the best of times, but I'm feeling the effects of this kind of house arrest that we're all under. Really, not being able to go further than a walk that starts from my house and ends at my house. Every morning, I'm used to getting in the car with my dog and driving somewhere for a really early morning walk.
Yeah.
Just to see a fresh horizon, to see a new landscape, just to get your head, out of. I think artists spend a lot of time with, inside their own heads, and it's just good to get out first thing in the morning. So I'm really missing that. I'm feeling like my wings are really clipped at the moment.
Especially because
everyone's in that situation.
Yeah, especially because for your practice, I imagine, because it's landscape and it's tricky. Like you cannot really imagine a landscape, especially if it's not an abstract landscape kind of thing. Like if you have to have a source where to do the painting from. It's really tricky. Oh God.
It is.
Yeah, it's to be honest, it's for portrait as well, because I cannot meet people and try to get the essence of the person, because I cannot talk to them, like face to face, unless I try to do something like this. But because that's what I'll try to do with my portrait. It's not just replicate the person, the portrait, it's not. I work from photos anyway, most of the time. But I need that background, what's going on with the person before to start the drawing and then the paintings. It's a long process, and it starts from the conversation with the person, especially if I don't know the person. If I know the person,
that's really interesting.
If I know the person, I have feelings about the person, I have emotion about the person. Like I can try to connect with the person easier. But if I don't know the person, especially with commissions, it's tricky, because I don't work like that. I don't work just to replicate like the face and the portrait.
No.
So yeah, it's been tricky with like the third lockdown now.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, when you think historically, public portrait commissions, for example, the artist would be asked to spend several days with that person to get to know them.
Yeah.
And it's capturing their, I guess in Spanish it's duende, right? I don't know what it is in Italian, but in Russian it's dusha. In English it's the soul. It's the soul of the person, isn't it? And interestingly, you can draw parallels with non-portrait painting, certainly with landscape, because personally I would get to know a landscape by doing very quick pencil studies, very, very rapid studies, even just with my thumb and a bit of paint, just to get to know the scene, either in a quick graphite study, a quick color study, and then you feel like you know the scene, and then as an abstract or someone who is more inclined to proceed with an abstract mind, I feel like I know the scene already, and that's where the poetry, that's where the imagination comes in. But it's really interesting to hear you say that, because I think that there are parallels, even though we work in such a different way.
Yeah.
It is very important to know your subject, and of course you know it so well afterwards. I think it's a Chinese. Is it a Chinese proverb that I think that the saying is, if you hear about something, you'll forget. If you see a photograph or something, you may remember, but if you draw it, then you'll know it.
Yeah, he stuck with you longer.
It's that really.
And I always do this. I always get caught up in conversation, and I don't give the chance to the guest to introduce her, like, yourself. And if you wanna do that, like, real quick, so like people know you, and they might know you already, but if you wanna just introduce yourself, a little bit of your background and stuff.
Sure. Well, I was born and raised in a beautiful, beautiful place on the southeast coast of Ireland. So I spent my childhood there. I suppose that's where I became a daydreamer. And artists are daydreamers, let's face it. So, and then I had to grow up in a real hurry, by leaving this idyllic place. Moved to Denmark, studied Russian at the Slavic Institute of Copenhagen. I thought languages was the thing for me. And then I ended up, the pivotal thing for me was when I went to the Soviet Union in the early 90s, just before, well, it was during Glasnost and Perestroika. And I happened to be there on a trip, a potential work trip, to help further my studies in Russian. And a coup happened. The state of emergency happened when Boris Yeltsin was on his tank and Gorbachev was apprehended, and it was the beginning of the collapse of the Soviet Union, and I happened to be there at the time. And not only was that an extraordinary thing to witness, but the company that I was going to work for said, look, this is too dangerous. You need to go home. We don't want you here. Just go back. And I thought, well, I'm going to fail my exams if I go back. This is crazy. So a very dear friend of mine said, look, history's being made. If you go now, you're going to regret it. So stay. You can sleep on a rolled up mattress in my parents' apartment, and just stay. Live out the semester that you had planned on doing. So I did, and I waved my friends off from Moscow train station with tears running down my face, because I really wanted to go back. And my mother, I was worried about her, and because of course the news was, obviously it was a potentially dangerous situation to be in, but we were never in danger. But anyway, I got this lifeline. I got this invitation and I took it, and it was hard to take it because I wanted to go home. But
Did you regret it?
Staying. Not at all, because she was secretary to a painter. And then so I started to hang out in his studio. And then one day I realized, actually, it's a long story and will take up too much time. But anyway, my future husband and I ended up living there for a couple of years. But I apprenticed with this particular artist, Yuri Koval, and he was the pivotal moment when I realized, oh my God, I think painting is what I want to do. And I remember the day I said to him in my pidgin Russian, could you show me how to paint? And it started from there. So he would send me out onto the streets of Moscow, to paint. Came back to the West, had to get real again. Ended up settling here in the UK. My mother was English. I sound quite English. My mother was English. And in fact, my grandparents came from Bristol. So I ended up settling in Bristol. We ended up doing the thing of, house, kids, got to pay the bills, had a job, but I was miserable. And it was after I had my son that I realized, in order to be a good parent, I'm going to have to be a happy one. And I gave up my job. And
I love that.
And I became a stay-at-home mum, painting when they were asleep. and so I think what's interesting is that, I've made a conscious choice to put my kids first. But now, both of them, by next year, my youngest will be at university. And I feel like my career is only just going to begin.
Oh, that's
So there you go.
It was a simple question. Oh, what's your background? Usually people are like, oh, I studied that. It sounded like a movie. Literally, like that was great.
Well, I tell you what, Matteo, when we first came to this country, people used to say, oh, Miguel and I, because my husband is Argentinian, go figure, of Russian parents. So, it makes, you couldn't make it up. But we used to say to each other, I think people think we're making this up. And whenever they would ask, so what's your story, would go, oh, nothing. We're just here, because we thought people are going to go, what? You're making it up. It's true, we didn't make it up, and we even were married in Moscow. but that's another story. All joking aside, if people are interested in my progression from then realizing that I wanted to become a painter to pretty much now, about if anyone can bear to scroll down about 15 rows on my grid on Instagram, I actually started, it's in reverse order. I posted for 30 days. It was a Visual Artists Association challenge to post for 30 days. I was having a studio built at the time and I couldn't paint. So I thought, okay, I'll do this. And it just grew organically. I ended up charting visually through the photographs that I've put up, my journey from starting to where I am now. And it's been a long, interesting one with lots of perceived failure, and hard work.
Yeah, there are so many of those.
But that's what makes you strong.
Yeah.
If you sailed through life without any problems, A, you'd be boring.
It's kind of boring. Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, but then, what are you giving back to the world? You're giving back nothing because it's been too easy, And look, come on, us artists, we love to suffer. It's part of our...
Yeah, it's so true. Because we wouldn't be one if we didn't like suffering. We would just go to a normal job and live our life easier. It's so
exactly.
True. So I'm guessing, as you bring it up, how did you think your practice obviously did, but did it change drastically during all these years that you start like painting and stuff?
I think probably the best word to say, it's evolved. It's evolved, and it is interesting to see the early work. And in fact, I became quite well known here in Bristol. If anyone, when they're allowed, wants to go into the gift shop of the SS Great Britain, they actually carry. I gave them exclusivity on a range of images for merchandise of my early Bristol cityscapes.
Nice.
So I painted because the kids were little and I had very little time. I think my work was quite controlled. I loved cityscapes, but there was always a semi-abstract element. My mentor, Yuri Kaval, at the time, very much influenced me and said in the studio, he said, paint what you see and a little bit more. So, which interestingly, I think is probably the opposite to you as a very representational painter. Because you have to, obviously, it's interesting to hear you say that you're not just interested in painting or drawing a pure representation, that your purpose is to capture that person. And that's what separates a good portrait from a not so good portrait. So I really salute you on that. That's
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a battling when you start that process and you try really hard to represent the person, like not only like in a figure way, like but as well emotionally what he's going through at the moment. And I'm really basically what I try to do with my portrait is telling a story of the person. That's what I'm interested into. It's not the portrait per se. It's more what the person is going through and what it is, without even telling you what is going through with anything in particular in the painting or in the portrait. For example, I'm giving like a practical example. I tried couple of years ago. It's going on for a couple of years now. But I'm trying to represent the immigrants in Bristol. So as a big topic, obviously, as like hot topic right now, immigrants, they can see as really different things. It can be really good or it can be really bad. I don't think there is like a middle ground where you're like indifferent to it. People can think, oh, it's a beautiful mix of cultural, like this is what we need, it's fine, that's great, or they are coming to take our jobs, like that kind of thing. And because I am one of them, that's why I'm really close to the subject. But my series for the immigrants was a series of drawing with charcoal and ink, and it was like quite big black and white portrait, quite close face, a close-up of the face, and I try to not tell people that were immigrants. That was the message. They're just there. They're just person. They're just living. They're just because they're from somewhere else. It doesn't mean they are bad or good. It's just they're people. Like there was, I didn't write any name on like next to the portrait because they could give away, and it was people go really interesting in those portrait because they did not expect there was the whole story behind. They just thought there were black and white drawings of people, but yeah, it's I think that's what makes like really good art, when it's not in your face kind of thing.
Absolutely.
When people can stop and think about what is the portrait or the landscape.
Definitely. Yeah, well, it gives, I think it's very important to allow the viewer room to make up their own perception of what they're seeing. In fact, there's a wonderful quote by an artist. No, he wasn't an artist. I think he was a philosopher. I think he was a French philosopher. I can't remember. But he said to name an object too directly is to rob it of its beauty. So I found that really kind of resonated with me, because it is about allowing the viewer kind of, you take them by the hand, you bring them into this world, and then you let them make up their own minds. And I suppose with and it's so different obviously with portrait painting versus landscape painting, particularly abstract landscape painting. The landscape, it's about capturing, I mean, it's time travel, really. We are capturing a moment in time, aren't we? When we create an image that is anchored in a moment that will stay constant. We will die, we will, become the dust, and our work will remain, which is a huge privilege, really. And the older we get, unlike, sports people, maybe with the exception of golfers, but unlike sports people, we get better and stronger and more confident with age. If you're a footballer, you've already had it by the time you're 35. Yeah. Isn't it true? So we need to celebrate these positive things about our career. But it is, and obviously social commentary is not something that I feel there are a lot of artists out there who would do a better job. I'm not drawn to the idea of social commentary in my work. So therefore, unlike what you've just described, it sounds like there is an element of that to it, and celebrating the fact that we are, a global nation, and we should be celebrating all the wonderful diversities that we do have in our cities. But I have completely forgotten what I was going to say. That's part of the aging process. I tell you that.
And we need to accept that. It's fine.
Exactly.
Let's talk about a little bit of your practice. So, how do you approach that scary blank canvas, that white that everyone is so afraid of?
Sure. No, it's a great question. That is a great question. Well, firstly, I mean, I used to just underpaint it in a off grey so that it wasn't white anymore, or a light kind of ochre or something. But there are several ways. I mean, I will actually, and it's a shame that we couldn't record in the studio because of technical issues, because I could have shown you a few examples, and I haven't got them to hand. But I kind of mess up the canvas. I kind of really just put everything on it. I throw in combinations of darks and lights and scribble and splash. If it's oil, of course, that's a slower process and it takes days to dry. But if it's acrylic, I can then dry it quite quickly with a hairdryer. So I think the most important thing is to lose that self-consciousness. And once your canvas is messed up and really kind of inviting some kind of solutions, I think you become more focused on your painting. It's a bit like when my kids used to swim train, I would notice that the coach would give them some kind of a task in the pool. Because they were swimming up and down, but then the coach would say to them, hold one hand behind your head and then kick with this leg and hold this. And I used to think, what the hell is he doing? And I asked him one day, and he said, well, it's because then their attention isn't on the actual art of staying afloat, that they are distracted with other things. So, I mean, every artist will probably obviously answer that question differently, but I enjoy, in fact, I think it's the most liberating part, interestingly, is the blank canvas stage. And so often I wish I could just finish a canvas after about 30 minutes, because it's spontaneous, it's uninhibited, but it's not a finished painting.
It's really different kind of approach for what I do. And that's why I've tried to my latest series, it's during the summer, it was more an exploration of try to not have that perfect painting from the beginning. So it was more like try to have fun, try to make marks, try to distract from that kind of way of thinking, just because I was putting myself in a comfortable zone, and that's, I think it's one of the trick to get really good at something, and try to do something completely different from what you're used to, and that will get you somewhere else, and it can be really helpful for your practice, and I recommend everyone to do that. And I try to do that as much as I could during the lockdown and during this summer, and I don't think I don't think that's my style, but it did give me something in the end, which that's what I was looking for. It was more like the non-caring of making the perfect artwork all the time. It was more like just have fun, and don't think about it too much. It's just do it. Have a plan, but have fun, basically.
And actually, that is the essence of what makes a painting successful, I think, is that it is maintaining a sense of enjoyment, even though it can be incredibly painful. And the word pain is in the word painting, so it does make you, kind of wonder whether that's a coincidence or not. But no, it's everyone's process is different, but certainly enjoying it, not worrying about where you're going, and what you've described to me sounds like any athlete who is just warming up. It's often just warming up exercises that we have to do, and any form of creation when it comes to drawing or painting will help inform what you then do next. And I mean, I found that I have created paintings that have been very pivotal, and people ask me, "Oh wow, how did you do that?" And the only fair answer is through failing in several paintings beforehand.
Yeah.
And then through perceived failure, because they weren't, and in fact it really should be taken out of our vocabulary. But from version 1, version 2, version 3, and then suddenly the poetry starts to happen. All of it's useful, and not always easy.
Yeah, it's not. What are you looking when you try to represent the landscape, and when you try to capture that particular piece of view? What are you looking for? Because when you go out there and you do like the landscape, it can mean everything, and there's so much out there. What are you looking to represent with your painting, especially?
I think the main thing is and actually a continuation of the previous question about how your work has evolved, because I'm looking for simplicity. I'm looking to reduce down the elements into very simple forms. Doesn't always mean that the painting ends up simple, but I'm working towards that, so that and introducing, I do love pattern. I love any excuse, for example, when in autumn, when the leaves die off and you've got, or certain meadow grasses, or in the garden, seeds, you have the structure of seed heads, which give wonderful excuse to use pattern. And I suppose that's where, my mentor, I'm very lucky that I have a mentor who, sadly I don't see him often enough, but it's he very much, my living mentor, my Russian mentor sadly died, and that's a long time ago anyway, but Hugo Grenville, who is my current mentor, he explains it as painting. You have to ask yourself this question: Are you like a journalist recording the truth, what you see directly in front of you, or are you a poet? And therefore are you depicting, well, obviously your version of what you're seeing based on how you're feeling at the time? And I think that's probably the most important thing about why a painting can possess energy and why sometimes it doesn't, is if people are not allowing their feelings to result in the type of brushstroke they use, the type of color palette that they use, things like that. Yeah. I don't want to get too technical.
No,
but you know, I think painters would probably appreciate, you know, that kind of admission, really, I suppose, you know. But so landscape for me, I just want to make it something that people can dive into, and if they're familiar with the landscape, that particular place, that they just feel free to then go into their own thought process about what that landscape means to them when they're there. And if they're not familiar with it, then just to enjoy it for its aesthetic. I think there is nothing wrong about enjoying a painting just because it's beautiful. That's what Matisse, you know, used to do. Just beauty. You know, we are in the business of making things, not always, obviously, but a lot of us in terms of making things beautiful.
Do you work from real life, or do you don't mind working from photos, or you work only from photos and in real life? No,
I think my best work is from real life, actually, plein air painting, obviously, because of the previous. I mean, that's not to say that I won't then go back to the studio with the plein air painting because it's not finished, because either the weather has changed or whatever. But obviously I'll take photos while I'm there and then go back to the studio and then decide, because it's a very fast pace experience when you're out plein air. But so they complement each other very well. But of course during lockdown, I need to refer to a lot of photography. I wish someone had said 2 years ago, pay attention to the world around you, photograph it and sketch it, because you're going to be under house arrest for about a year and you're going to need material, you know, to work with. So.
Talking about the sketches, when I scrolled through your Instagram, I saw quite a few planning and quite a few sketches in there, and I think they might be the what I really like about the works. There is something beautiful about a sketchbook of an artist, and sometimes it's even more. There's so much beauty inside the sketchbook than the finished painting, because you get the whole thought process, and it's such a beautiful thing to see. As if you're an artist, especially, you kind of try to understand what's going on. And I really like your sketches, and there is so much going on in the sketches, and you can see the whole planning of the color and all the marks. Are they a big part? It seems like to be a big part of your process.
I think it is. I think. Well, firstly, thanks for that. That's kind of you to say, artist to artist, and I totally agree with you. I think artist sketchbooks are the most fascinating, because you're seeing the unabridged, the uncropped, the reworked version, where the spontaneity is, and where there's just no. You aren't tightening up at that point, and that's why that they are so successful. So they are an important part, and I think as a portrait painter, certainly that, you know, back in the day when people could afford to hang out with their subject for a couple of days to get to know them, I think I tend to sketch several versions of a landscape, which is the equivalent of, you know, having a cup of coffee with it, having a chat, going for a walk, you know, having dinner together, that kind of thing, so that you get to know your subject. And so
I like that.
So I mean, obviously when it comes to a commission, then you know, that's when it can become a painting by committee, and that you have to be careful of that. And I think commissions, you know, artists should consider refusing commissions if it's going to interfere with their integrity as a painter. It's a hard one though, because commissions, you know, especially when you know you're going to get paid for it, because we are doing this to make a living, which a lot of people don't seem to think or realize. You know, but I hope I've answered your question on the sketching. It is a very important part, and I think my goal would be to try and maintain that spontaneity in the finished work. Definitely.
It's they're really important for me as well. It's about knowing, how, as you said, the subject, and it's really important that process, even if you do just a couple of it makes you more confident with the shapes, with the shading, with the dark and light part of the painting, and it will really help you. I have no idea how people can just jump into the painting without having that process before, because it does help you a lot to know the subject, as you said.
Well, I think, you know, interestingly, I mean, there is no right or wrong way, but you can choose to do that preparation. And I think that preparation is what will give you that confident line when you then go to do your drawing or your painting, because you've already had that conversation in your mind, and your brain is thinking about these things. And the of course, from an abstracted point of view, you know, you're thinking, because there is I'm struggling to find a different word because I'm not that fond of this one, but there's an intellect behind an abstract painting and what makes it work and what doesn't. And once you've sketched a scene a couple of times, you don't have to think then, oh, those factors I need to bear in mind, you know, whether, you know, kind of light source or where your darks are, where your lights are, because you've already had that conversation. So then when you go in with your other materials and this wonderful kind of hopefully sustained kind of loose approach, that's when, you know, you should try and keep that spontaneity rather than tightening up and up and up and up. So maybe people who, I mean, if it works for some people, that's fantastic. Just delve straight in. And of course it works for some people, you know, and we all work in different ways.
Yeah.
It's fun. Maybe it's fun trying both.
Yeah, it's true. As I said before, jump into an uncomfortable zone and try to push yourself to do something different. I might try in the end.
Absolutely. Well, it's like, you know, drawing with your non-dominant hand or painting with your non-dominant hand. I mean, that's a fantastic exercise.
It's really weird.
It's really weird, but and the beauty of a child's sketch. I mean, didn't Picasso say, you know, I've painted for 40 years and I can't paint as beautiful as a child, or I don't know, something along those lines.
Something like that. We have to paint like a child.
Exactly.
I was attracted to your paintings because I'm a big fan of. I love blue in general. That's my favorite color. That's what I try to have quite often in my paintings. And your blue, gray, it's really dominant in your painting. It's a constant. It's always there. And I was really curious of, is it because do you think represent better the landscape that you portray, or it's a choice that like you want that color to be there?
No, that's fascinating, Matteo. I need to have a look now at my range of work. I didn't realize I constantly use blue and grey. I mean, I love grey. I love it for its neutral properties. I
think it represents like the best, especially if you try to capture the English landscape. And
grey weather.
Unfortunately, but it's the connection between the two as well. It works really well. I really love the two colors next to each other and how you use it. And I was just curious if it's a conscious choice, if that's what you want to do, or it just happened.
Well, I'm going to start paying attention. I'm going to start paying attention. It isn't conscious, to answer your question. No, it's not. But I also like blue. And I hated green for a very long time, but then I learnt to mix greens that I approved of. You know, and color mixing is so important, and you know that's a lesson in itself, and it's very personal to everyone's mood, because you can change the mood of a painting obviously by how you color mixed, but there are so many elements really, but thank you for pointing that out.
You said before, I want to come back on something that you said before about the simplicity, because it doesn't really look like they are simple. They meaning like there is so much going on there. There is so many marks, so many shapes communicating to each other, and they work well. And now that you put it out there, you've tried to simplify the painting. I can see the simplicity of the painting, but first look, it doesn't look like, just because obviously it's an abstract painting, and it's really curious about that. And why especially do you want to do that? Like, why do you want to try to make as simple as you can?
I think it's just how you, if you're going to paint or create whatever it is you're creating, as and especially if you've chosen it as a career as a painter, and I've said this before, it's very important to be honest with yourself as to why you want to paint what you paint, because if you don't, and if you're painting to please other people, then I think that is a very insincere kind of path. So for me, I took a real chance at changing my style, because I was quite well known here in Bristol, but I needed a simplicity or to loosen up. I think actually it's probably a natural progression for a lot of people as they get older, that you just want to see things in simpler ways. Now, it's interesting to hear you say that the marks and the kind of gestures and everything don't seem simple, but that's just years and years of working. No, that's a really interesting thing to ponder, but and I don't feel I'm there yet. I mean, I want to reduce things down even further. One artist has said, what's the least amount of information that you can have in a painting, and it be a painting, and do that. But that only resonates with me because that's what I'm interested in doing. Because there is obviously our personalities come out, or our interests, or our passions come out in our work. And so you can have a poem that's really long, or you can have a very short poem, but it can contain so much suggestion and information that allows you to go off and daydream. So it's personal preference. So my personal preference is try to simplify things. I might get bored with that and go back to it's a moving target constantly. And I think for artists, especially people, artists who rely on making a living, I think it's important that they allow themselves the freedom to constantly change, constantly evolve. And if it's done with sincerity, then anyone looking at that work will go, I know who that artist is.
Yeah.
It's a completely different subject matter, but I know who that person is. So your kind of signature style comes through, and I suppose that's something that I don't know, there are too many worries about it. Just don't crowd please, paint for yourself. This is what I do. I paint for myself, and then because let's face it, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. We are trying to make a living here. Then you find the people who are interested in buying, but not the other way around. If you do it the other way around, you'll get pretty disenfranchised quite quickly.
Yeah, it's really difficult finding the person that, okay, they give you a commission, but they want you to paint and do what you want to do as an artist, and it's really difficult to find that person and they give you the freedom basically to do what you want to do, and they always try to make it look like what they want and what they expect you from, and it's a bit frustrating, obviously, and you kind of like try to deal with it, and but it's so important for an artist to express like as best they can, and obviously they paint for your painting, but they should be able to give you the freedom to to do what they want, what you want, and how you want it.
Well, if I might jump in there and just say to you, because I have a couple of decades, several decades ahead of you, I am several decades ahead of you, to say that as hard a decision as it is, and I've had to do this in the past, is to say thanks but no thanks. But I know an artist who will offer to work with you. You know, if you know another portrait painter who will, because our self-esteem and our self-worth, if we start to paint by committee, if we suddenly have people coming in, and it's a really hard one, because you want that money. But the thing is, if you get known to be the person who will, Matteo, he paints the way he paints, but you know what, really kind of pushes buttons, and he'll paint the way I want my portrait to look. I would really urge you in your young career to make the really tough decision of foregoing a couple of commissions by saying, look, and I really appreciate you contacting me, but you should contact me because you like the way I work.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you want a commission from me, that it will be in my style. Because when people communicate with me, I will say, can we just be clear on this is the way I paint? So, I will work up a thumbnail idea of what it is you want, but it will be the way I paint. And I've been very fortunate that most people have given me the liberty to do that. But now I will get to a point, and I have said, I'm really sorry, I'm not the artist for you. And if you can find a couple of artists who you can communicate with, where someone might have someone wanting a commission that's more to your style, you might have a portrait painter friend who might refer somebody to you. So I'd really urge you to try and just be brave enough to risk losing some initial commissions, and you get known as the person who is has the integrity to stay true to his style. And it's a bitter pill to swallow initially, but just remember, it's a growing thing. And if you start right at the beginning, then it's much easier to build on that rather than take apart those bricks later. You can, obviously, but it would be better for you. So I think it's very important to make very clear, show people examples of your work, and just say, can I just be clear on this, that this is the way I paint? And I'm interested in your case, obviously catching the soul of this person, the personality within the gaze, but if you're wanting just for something that looks like the person because it's taken from a photograph, then there are thousands of people on Instagram who can do that kind of portrait. But that's not you.
Have you got any big influence, as like do you look at people from the past and try to get inspiration from it, and how do you get inspiration as well?
Yeah, there are loads of artists from the past, and I think we're all influenced. Quickly to answer that question, I would say, Matisse, Picasso, Braque, the Cubist. I was heavily influenced by Cubism for a long time. More latterly, I suppose when I became in more recent years interested in landscape, I discovered a landscape painter from the kind of 30s, 40s, 50s, Ivan Hitchens, who has this wonderful distilled way of painting landscapes, and I just think his work is beautiful. But there are so many. It's countless, really. And I think the most important thing is to enjoy. If you get, and interestingly, I'll just backtrack a bit and say Ivan Hitchens. I was interested to read about him, that he, at the time, I don't know, it was in the 1950s or something, he had chances to spend time in Paris, and he didn't want to. He wanted to, but he didn't go. He only went once because he didn't want to be influenced by the paintings that he saw there, because they would then automatically affect the way he painted. And that happens to all of us. But the most important thing is we can allow ourselves to be influenced by people, because that's a natural progression as a painter. You look at, Monets and Van Goghs and Gauguins, and they're all influenced by each other. But what you have to do is trust your own voice by painting, drawing, working, and then you start to trust all the information that's come through by looking at other artists. You then develop your own voice and start to trust that voice.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Try to not copying, but try to, as Picasso said one time, like stealing what good is somebody art and try to make your own art with what the artist influenced you. It's
Absolutely.
It's a really it can be really tricky. You can get caught on like copying the style and copying what other artists are doing, because you might see they're selling more and you might see, you know, stuff like that, and it can be really tricky. But if you need to try to trust your gut in the end and stick with what you look like, what you interesting in, how you do it. And sometimes it can be really hard, but it's always good get inspiration by other people. It just like, I think it's a big part of like how artist works, and try to get inspired by artists, try to get motivated by other artists, and try to do your own.
Absolutely. No, it is. It's very important. We wouldn't, any of us, be here if it weren't for the excitement that we felt looking at other people's work.
Yeah.
And I mean, I write inspirational quotes on the ceiling of my studio with a big fat pen. You know, I write them to look at them on a daily basis. And one of the things that I wrote down is that originality is for amateurs, but consistency is for artists. So neither you or I can really do anything original because it's all been done before. But what we can do is we can work consistently and over time, you know, you will develop that thing. But I think just one thing you said there, which is a bit of an alarm bell that rings, because I've suffered from it as well, is looking at what other people are doing. And I think you have to be very careful about, and I think this is where social media, as much as people say that it's essential for us as artists to be on social media, and it's a very positive tool, that you have to, you know, really not worry about what other people are doing, and just to just even take a break from looking at what other people are doing, because if you keep looking at other people's feeds and their perceived success, I think the main thing that can be damaging is that it's taking up your emotional headspace, and we need our emotional headspace to create. So I think all of us need to go on a little kind of fast now and again from Instagram, because I think it can be incredibly damaging for artists if we don't, a bit like any kind of, you know, drugs, you know, cigarettes, alcohol. You
need a break.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's really battling emotional thinking that I have with social media, because the whole thing of social media I'm not a fan of, but I use it as well, and I try to use it the best way I can, just basically to expose myself and to make people see what I'm doing, but try not to spend too much time on it. It can be used really good for you for promoting yourself, but at the same time it can be really damaging for your art as well. As you said, it's really
absolutely. I think what's far more valuable and far more important is that if you have a growing number of people who like your work, who might potentially buy your work in the future, I think it's far more, and it's proven, it is a tried and tested method, that you interact with them privately through a newsletter or some kind of form of blog that helps explain your process, kind of lifts the veil of who is Matteo, why does he work the way he works? If it's a bit like, kind of, and Instagram's okay for that, but it's like getting seeds and just blowing them, and they just land anywhere. Whereas if you actually have a curated newsletter and get people to sign up to that newsletter, and then you communicate with them on a monthly basis or weekly basis. I don't think people, I don't know, I'm not a fan of the idea of people receiving stuff every week in their inbox, but people want to hear from you. They want to hear from you, but one day when they have enough money, they will buy from you. So it's a proper relationship. It's a proper interactive relationship. So while Instagram is important, I think burying your soul on Instagram, I think it's quite important to keep the valuable information and share, behind the scenes with those who actually sign up to communicate with you via a newsletter, or who go to your exhibitions, or who, it's easy just to hit like on a post, but someone who actually takes time out of their evening, obviously post COVID, to attend an exhibition, that's proper dedication. And I think that relationship is the one that needs to be nurtured, because in the, if galleries really are a dying thing, if galleries are going to become, there will always be, a certain high-end gallery, but, word on the street is that artists are taking control of their careers and blah, 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 then take control by developing a relationship with your potential collectors and give them in return little snapshots of what it's like to be Matteo, and the wonderful work that he produces. So it's a lot to take in. I'm only on the bottom rung of that ladder, but we give too much out for free.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. I was just thinking when you said exhibiting that, I miss exhibitions so much.
Yeah.
It's such
it's connection.
It's such a big part of being an artist, and it's so important for people like to be able to exhibit and have that evening when you talk to people about your art sincerely, without any like filter on it. It's just you raw on the wall, and people like it or not, and it's just you have that talk with your audience, and it's so important. And I start to miss it like that so much.
Yeah.
But we have to deal with that for
well,
a little
hopefully
bit.
It won't. Yeah, hopefully it won't be forever. But that connection is really important, and it feeds our soul. Even though we should. It's very valuable to talk about art with people who appreciate what you do, and like you said, the reason you started the blog was that the podcast was that you wanted to speak to other artists, because as much as you love your family and you like spending time with them, they won't fully understand,
what's going on in your mind,
why you want to get up in the morning and what's going on in your head, and us artists, we do. And I guess that's why, podcast is a great idea. It's a fantastic idea. And there's some wonderful podcasts out there.
Before I let you go, because I'm taking so much time of your morning.
No worries.
Out of curiosity, I was just wondering, how long does it take for you to kind of finish your painting? Because obviously, as an abstract painting, you might feel it will take like really quick time to do one, but I don't think in your case it does. Because how long will it take for you to finish your painting?
Well, there's a really honest answer, and there's the expected answer, I suppose. It's taken me 51 years to paint the way I paint, to complete a painting.
Love it.
So,
yeah.
So that's how long it takes.
I love it. That's a perfect end. Before I let you go, Laura, I just give it a chance to people to plug in social media, website if they have. So if you want to just say yours, and so people can see your artwork.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Matteo. Well, my website is www.CRAMER.com, and my Instagram account is @CRAMERpaintings, Cramer with a C, and not so much Facebook, but Instagram primarily. I do have a people can go onto my website and subscribe to my diary updates, so my behind the scenes and how I work, and sketchbook, revealing of sketchbook ideas and stuff. So I try and write once a month to my followers as a thank you for being interested. And
that's great.
So,
that's perfect. I will put all the links and below in the description, so they can just click on it and they can go and visit your website and your Instagram page. And
that's fantastic.
I wanted to say thank you to take time to be on my podcast, and thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome, Matteo. Well, it was a privilege to be asked, and I appreciate you trying to stay connected with other artists. So thanks for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Laura. Thank you. Take care.
Bye now.